I was closing aisle 7 when my manager dropped a shortage report on my chest and said I would cover it. 1 extra hour, 1 public scolding, and 1 useless life. Great night. At 12:03, the lights flickered 3 times. The freezers roared, the floor trembled, and the parking lot outside turned into a torchlit stone square with a dry well in the center. A blue screen appeared above Register 4. Night transfer active. Duration, 6 hours. Minimum turnover, 200 silver value. Stability, 41%. Panic or damage will reduce return safety. I checked my phone. No signal. I checked the cameras. Every angle showed the same medieval square, the same fog, and the same empty stalls. This was real, and I was trapped inside it. I am not a fighter. I am not a hero. I stock shelves, rotate milk, calm angry customers, and count damaged goods. But hunger has patterns, and I know how people move around scarcity. The first customer was a tall woman in leather armor with a bleeding arm and a knife already in her hand. She saw the automatic doors open and looked ready to carve me apart. 2 thinner women came in behind her, carrying a sleeping child wrapped in rough cloth. They were not looking at me. They were staring at rice, salt, canned stew, and fresh meat. I almost offered help for free. Then I saw the blue screen again and stopped myself. If I failed the turnover target, the store might not return, and then everyone here would lose anyway. So I grabbed receipt paper, wrote fast prices, and held them above the counter. Rice by the cup, salt by the pouch, bandages by the roll, no grabbing, no debt. Pay first, speak clearly. A skinny man slipped through the line and laughed at me. He called me a clueless shop rat and offered 1 copper for 3 cans, 2 salt bags, and half pork. Then he winked. I knew his type immediately. Every store has one parasite who talks loud, smiles wide, and tries to steal under the cover of confusion. I ignored him and opened 1 can in front of everyone. I handed the first spoon to the wounded huntress instead of the loud trader. She tasted the stew, went silent, and dropped 2 silver coins on the counter before asking for more bandages. That one sale broke the room open. The mother offered a bracelet for rice. Another woman offered sewing needles for salt. The loud trader kept speaking, but nobody cared what he thought anymore. I set the first rule set right there. 1 ration per person. Payment before product. Trade goods inspected after. No shouting. No touching shelves. Break the rule once, and you leave empty-handed. The blue screen updated. Turnover, 36 of 200. Stability, 44%. So sales mattered, not pity. Fine. If I wanted to survive this world and my own, I needed controlled generosity, not stupidity. The wounded huntress wanted to buy every bandage and all the dried meat. I refused and split her order. If one person cleared my shelves on night 1, the crowd would rip me apart. Then a broad-shouldered woman in a faded officer coat stepped forward. She did not shop immediately. She watched my hands, my prices, my line, and the exits. She was measuring my control. She finally bought lamp oil, salt, and 2 rolls of clean cloth with exact silver. No argument, no fear. People behind her relaxed a little. Order is contagious when someone credible accepts it first. Then the first real attack came. 3 men moved along the side wall toward the stock entrance. I saw them on camera, heads low, timing their rush while the line crowded the front doors. I could not win a fair fight against even one of them. So I killed the lights in aisle 9, locked the inner doors, and shoved a chain of shopping carts across the narrow passage. The first thief forced the door and stepped right into a fire extinguisher blast. He screamed, stumbled blind, and crashed into the carts. The other 2 hit him from behind and went down together. The alarm started shrieking through the entire building. The women at the front turned as one. Suddenly, the thieves were stealing food from hungry families in plain sight. The wounded huntress moved first. The officer moved second. I stayed behind the carts and kept the extinguisher ready while boots, fists, and metal filled the corridor with a short, ugly lesson. When it ended, the 3 men were on the floor, coughing, bleeding, and begging to leave. I opened the path only after they dropped everything and crawled back out into the square. The officer coat woman came to the counter again and asked the question that mattered. How much food did I have, and how long could I keep selling before the town tore itself apart? I asked what the town needed most. She answered without pausing. Grain, salt, lamp oil, dried meat, clean cloth, and medicine for winter fever. Luxury could wait. Hunger and sickness could not. That gave me my first real map of demand. Staples build crowds, meat builds status, medicine builds leverage. Beauty goods could wait until empty stomachs stopped ruling every deal. A young mother offered her last necklace for extra rice. I wanted to say yes. Instead, I sold her a smaller ration at a lower margin and marked the necklace value in my notebook. That was my first compromise. Cheap, limited staples to build trust. High margins on rare goods to hit the turnover goal. No free flood of mercy that would empty shelves in one desperate hour. The blue screen flashed again. Turnover, 121 of 200. Stability, 53%. Exposure risk in Origin World increased by 4%. Great. Even success came with a bill waiting for daylight. Before the square faded, the officer coat woman returned with exact payment, 5 disciplined women, and a simple offer. She would help keep order tomorrow night if I kept the food flowing. When the stone square blurred back into my parking lot, I checked the final numbers. Turnover, 214 of 200. Stability, 58%. I had survived the first night. That meant bigger trouble next. I got back to the real parking lot at 6:09 a.m. The square was gone, but the missing stock was not. 3 cans, 4 salt bags, half a tray of pork, and 2 bandage rolls had vanished. My manager arrived at 6:23 with bad coffee and worse timing. He checked the scanner, frowned at the numbers, and asked why Freezer 7 showed a gap after close. I blamed damaged stock. He did not believe me, but he was too tired to dig. That gave me one day, maybe 2. I spent the morning rotating stock, hiding nerves, and writing a cleaner inventory map in my pocket notebook. If the store jumped again tonight, random selling would kill me. I needed a formula. What moved fast, what built loyalty, what drew predators, and what daylight could still explain. By noon, I had my first categories. Staples, rice, salt, oil, canned stew. Medical, bandages, alcohol, pain pills. Status, beef, sugar, chocolate. Women's demand, soap, shampoo, cream, perfume, cloth. I hated how accurate that last category looked, but hunger does not erase vanity. It changes the tone. A starving town still wants to smell clean, feel soft, and keep some dignity. Before my shift started, I bought a cheap notebook and split it into 4 columns. Sold, traded, hidden, and impossible to explain. If this became war, paperwork would be one of my weapons. I checked clearance bins and damaged packaging carts, dented cans, torn label soap, nearly expired sweets. In my world, discount junk. In theirs, that could become silver and leverage. At 11:58 p.m., I locked the entrance with cleaner hands and a worse conscience. Then the lights flickered again. The freezers roared, and the parking lot gave me back my starving medieval square. Night transfer active, the blue screen said. Duration, 6 hours. Turnover target, 260 silver value. Stability, 58%. Exposure risk, 9%. Tonight had already become pricier. The officer coat woman was there before the doors finished opening. This time she came with order instead of hunger. 5 women formed a line, 2 watched the corners, and nobody touched a shelf. She still refused her name, but she gave me better news than politeness. Word had spread to 3 nearby streets, 1 guard post, 2 widows' rows, and the kitchens of a minor noble house. That was good for turnover and terrible for survival. More customers meant more money, more noise, more envy, and more chances for some idiot to decide my store belonged to him instead of me. I opened with controlled scarcity. 1 cup of rice, 1 salt pouch, 1 stew can, 1 soap bar max. Meat stayed behind the counter. Medicine stayed under the register. Sweets stayed invisible. The first hour was brutal but clean. Women traded spoons, silver scraps, hairpins, and 1 tiny gold tooth for food. I took what I could resell, refused what I could not, and counted everything aloud. Turnover hit 61 silver value in 40 minutes. Staples moved fastest, but margins were thin. Salt built trust, rice built lines, canned stew built shock. Meat smell did the rest. Then the first interesting sale hit. A pale maid in a hood ignored the food line and whispered 1 word at the counter. Soap. Not cheap soap either. She wanted the rose-scented one behind glass. I told her the price and expected outrage. Instead, she flinched, looked over both shoulders, and paid exact silver from a hidden purse. Then she asked very quietly if I had anything for soft hair. That sharpened the formula. Hunger ruled the crowd, but private shame ruled the rich. A noble house could skip 1 meal in public. It could not let its women smell like sickness. I sold the maid soap, shampoo, and 1 tiny sample bottle of perfume at a margin that beat 4 rice orders. She left red-faced, clutching the bag like she was carrying blackmail. Unfortunately, 1 man saw the deal. He wore guild colors, soft gloves, and the exact smile I hate most. Professional. He looked at the maid, then at me, and saw stolen profit. He laughed loud enough for the line to hear. Perfume? Soap? Soft-hand nonsense while the town starves? He wanted the crowd to turn on me. It almost worked for a dangerous second. So I changed the stage. I held up 1 plain soap bar and asked the nearest widow what she had washed with this month. She said ash water. I asked what happened to the children's skin. She showed me cracked hands and a child's rash without shame, because hunger had burned shame out of her. Then I said one bar could serve a family for days if cut into 6 careful pieces. That moved the mood back toward me, but I was not done. I opened the perfume sample, sprayed once into the air, and let the line smell something clean for the first time in months. Nobody spoke for 3 full seconds. Then even the women buying rice leaned closer. The guildman tried to sneer, but he had already lost the room. He mocked what he had never learned to price. I sold 2 soap bars, 1 cream tin, and another perfume sample in 5 minutes. The maid's hidden demand became public curiosity, then female hunger of a different and richer kind. Turnover jumped to 103 silver value. Profit improved. Exposure risk also climbed by 2%. High-value items mattered more on both sides of reality. Great. Even my soap could betray me. The officer coat woman finally gave me something useful besides discipline. Maris, she said, former quartermaster. That explained the eyes, the posture, and the way she counted my shelves. Maris told me the region had lost 2 grain caravans, 1 bridge, and half its hunting grounds in 1 bad season. Men had gone to war, died, or turned bandit. Women carried the rest. I asked Maris what would break first if winter came early. She answered in order: salt stores, lamp oil, clean cloth, and patience. Patience lasts until the first child collapses. That answer changed tonight's plan. Meat was not my strongest hook anymore. Control was. If I rationed basics and dripped luxury carefully, panic could become dependence. So I made bundles. Widow bundle: rice, salt, soap slivers. Huntress bundle: dried meat, cloth, lamp oil. Noble bundle: sugar, soap, perfume sample. Fever bundle: pills and wraps. Bundles solved 3 problems at once. They sped up the line, hid my exact inventory, and stopped buyers from stripping 1 shelf bare. They also made me look smarter than I felt. The guildman came back 30 minutes later with 2 friends and a louder voice. He announced that proper merchants could supply this square by morning and that my prices were madness. I asked him one question in front of everyone. If that was true, why had his stalls been empty yesterday while mothers traded jewelry for 1 cup of rice? He had no useful answer. Then I twisted the knife. I offered him a public test. He could outbid me for 1 noble bundle right there, using his own stock, and sell it cheaper. He accepted before thinking. Good. Maris called for space. The hooded maid had returned, this time with a taller woman beside her wearing plain clothes too fine for a servant. Noble posture, hard eyes. My witness. The guildman laid out stale grain, rancid lard, and 1 cracked perfume flask. I laid out sugar, soap, shampoo sachets, and 1 sealed perfume sample from checkout stock. I asked the plain-dressed noblewoman which table looked safer to bring into a private room. She ignored the guild goods, named my price, doubled it, and bought my bundle on the spot. The guildman's face fell apart in layers. Surprise, then calculation, then fear. He had mocked soap and lost a premium buyer in front of half the square. Revenge would follow. Turnover rose to 147 silver value. Maris quietly named the buyer. Lady Alara, widow by marriage, niece by blood, and trouble by every root that mattered in this district. I barely had time to file the name away before the next problem arrived. 4 local guards entered through the front and announced a public levy on preserved meat for street defense. Public levy was a polite phrase. They wanted free food, specifically my food. They expected fear because they wore official colors and carried spears. Hunger had trained me to hate bullies. I did not refuse directly. Direct refusal would make me the criminal. Instead, I asked who had signed the levy and which quarter would receive the meat first. The guards had neither answer ready. That gave Maris the opening. She spoke like a quartermaster, not a beggar. No distribution list, no posted order, no witness from the square council. In other words, theft with badges. The guards blustered, so I raised my voice and made the issue simple. If they took the meat, it would come from the ration line currently feeding widows, huntresses, and sick children. 30 women looked up at once. That is a bad number to anger in a starving district. The lead guard noticed too late. He had entered a shop. Now he was trapped inside an audience. One widow stepped forward and said her son had not eaten meat in 19 days. A huntress added that the same guards had bought ale last night instead of lamp oil for the watch. That was the kill shot. I did not need fists. I needed memory, witnesses, and hunger, aimed in the correct direction. The guards could beat one clerk, not public contempt. The lead guard changed tactics and offered to buy instead. Good. I sold him a smaller, higher-priced defense bundle with dried meat, oil, and salt. Legal sale, public shame, no free loss. Turnover reached 181 silver value. Profit was strong. Stability ticked to 61%. Then exposure risk rose to 13%. which meant my daylight cover was thinning faster than I liked. I was winning the square and losing my inventory cover, so I cut luxury sales for 30 minutes and pushed staples instead. Lower margin, lower attention, steadier control. Ugly math. During that lull, Maris finally made her offer properly. She would handle queue discipline, trusted carriers, and night watch rotation if I reserved fixed bundles for her people. I asked the obvious question. Why help me instead of taking control by force with her women? She answered even faster. Because I knew shelves better than soldiers knew famine. That line stayed with me. Not flattering, just efficient. I respected it instantly. I offered terms, controlled supply, influence over order, and no claim on hidden inventory. She accepted. Our handshake changed the square more than the meat had. A visible alliance means structure, and structure attracts desperate customers and smarter enemies. The line calmed almost at once. Then the boldest customer of the night returned. Lady Alara came back without the maid, bought sugar and hand cream, and asked whether all men in my world smelled this clean after work. I almost choked on my own breath. She smiled just enough to count as a weapon, then paid triple for the cream because 3 women behind her suddenly wanted it too. Efficient cruelty. That scene taught me something dangerous. Food made people survive. Comfort made them return. Vanity made them compete. In a starving district, desire was compressed, secretive, and profitable. Final hour. I sold out of 3 staple bundles, half the exposed soap stock, most of the dried meat, and all but 1 perfume sample. The blue screen kept rewarding success with suspicion. Turnover, 269 silver value. Stability, 64%. Exposure risk, 15%. Margin spread healthy, return safety acceptable. The store liked my strategy. My manager probably would not. As the square began to blur at the edges, Maris marked 6 women as trusted. Lady Alara left with sugar and secrets. The guildman left with wounded pride. He would return meaner. When the parking lot returned and fluorescent hum replaced torch smoke, I checked the shelf gaps twice. I had built a formula on night 2. Now I needed to survive daylight long enough to use it. I spent the next day hiding fear behind price stickers and barcode scans. Night 2 had made money. Night 3 needed structure, or my lucky shop would become a butcher yard. By 8 p.m., I had a cleaner inventory map, 2 hidden boxes of staples, 1 lock for the medicine drawer, and exactly 0 legal explanations if daylight management checked too deeply. The store jumped at midnight with less shaking and more dread. The square returned, the blue screen opened, and tonight's target flashed higher. Turnover 340, silver value. Stability 61%. Maris was waiting before the doors finished parting. She brought 6 women, 2 handcarts, and a list written on rough cloth. Not a request list. A supply chain trying to be born. She had sorted the district faster than I could sort a clearance rack. Widow's Row, Eastgate Watch, 3 hunt teams, 1 fever house, and 2 kitchens tied to minor nobility. That was the first moment I stopped seeing Maris as a strong customer and started seeing her as something far more dangerous. A competent woman who could turn my panic into process. She said it plainly. Last night worked because hunger was surprised. Tonight, hunger would come prepared. If I kept selling like a cashier, the square would drown me before dawn. I asked what she wanted for helping. She did not smile. Fixed bundles for her 6 women, first call on cloth and salt for the guard widows, and no hidden deals behind her back. I could afford the bundles. I could not afford blind trust. So I gave her a counteroffer. She gets reserved stock only if her people enforce the line, watch the side doors, and count aloud. Maris accepted in one breath. Good. I had just hired my first real subordinate without calling it that. The blue screen approved too. Auxiliary node registered. Queue control unlocked. That sounded ridiculous and useful. New function, assisted distribution. Cost, 1 trusted local group. Benefit, lower chaos losses, faster turnover, better district reputation. I split the floor in 10 minutes. Front queue for staples, side counter for medicine, back counter for premium goods, 1 guarded lane only. Every supermarket wants that layout. Hunger forced it. Maris placed her women without wasted words. 2 at the entrance, 1 at the meat case, 1 near the medicine drawer, 2 moving with the carts. Cleaner than half my day staff. The first hour proved her right. Instead of 1 desperate swarm, the square became 3 flows. Food, medicine, and private orders. Same crowd, less grabbing, better margins. Turnover hit 72 silver value in 25 minutes. Better than last night and cleaner. I sold less by panic and more by pattern. Pattern scales. Panic only spills shelves and blood. Then the healer arrived. She wore patched green, smelled like smoke and bitter roots, and looked at my alcohol bottles the way thieves look at open cash drawers after closing time. She did not ask for food first. She asked for pain tablets, boiled cloth, and clean blades. That told me more than a speech. Someone nearby had wounds they expected to lose. I asked what she had to trade. She opened a wooden box of dried herbs, resin cakes, fever bark, and one gray powder she swore could slow rot in bad flesh by morning maybe. I knew enough retail to fear miracle claims. I also knew enough common sense to value local medicine routes. So I offered a trial exchange. Small quantities, no exclusivity, and full results shared. She studied me as if I had answered a different question than the one she asked. Then she gave her name, Sina, healer by necessity, midwife by force, debt collector by mood. Sina was exactly the kind of ally a starving district breeds. Practical, tired, and more dangerous with a satchel than most men are with steel. I liked her immediately and trusted her not at all. Maris liked her even less. Good. Suspicion is healthy inside any system. Blind harmony belongs in fairy tales and failed businesses. I needed frictions I could measure, not smiles I could not. I set up a healer bundle on the fly. Wraps, alcohol, soap shavings, 2 pain strips, 1 blade packet. Cost to me, moderate, return. Herbs, treatment reports, and district credibility. The blue screen updated. Support professions increase retention. Sales target unchanged. Exposure risk plus 2%. Naturally, helping people also made me easier to notice. That danger arrived in silk boots. The same guild bastard from last night returned with a clerk, a porter, and a smile sharpened for revenge. He had not come to buy anything. He announced a complaint before half the square. My scales were false, my goods were cursed, my reserved bundles were favoritism, and my women at the doors were an illegal armed monopoly. That was a good accusation package. It mixed lies with envy and wrapped both in public concern. Maris moved one hand toward her belt. I shook my head. Wrong battlefield for knives. Instead, I asked him to inspect the scales in front of everyone. He agreed too quickly. That meant he had prepared something. I checked the platform and found a wax pellet under one foot. He had rigged my own scale before speaking. Smart, petty, and almost effective. If I had shouted immediately, it would look like panic. So I smiled, lifted the scale, and switched tables. Then I used his clerk's scale instead. Same weights, same goods, same crowd watching. My rice measured clean. His wax trick turned into evidence. The square laughed before I had to say much. I pushed harder. If he wanted fairness, good. We would weigh his emergency grain, too. Half the sacks were damp, one smelled of mold, and all of them were short by a criminal margin. That was tonight's face slap. He tried to brand me a cheat and ended up exposed as the man shaving hunger for private margin. Numbers hurt harder than speeches ever could. Women who had lost children to fever and men to bad rations do not forget damp grain. The guild clerk backed away first. The porter followed. Their master stood alone inside his own trick. I let the crowd do the rest. Never waste a perfect public failure by talking too much. He left promising law, witnesses, and consequences. Good. I had profit, memory, and a growing queue. Turnover crossed 131 silver value. Reputation rose. Stability hit 64%. Exposure jumped again. Success in one world kept writing liabilities in the other, line by line. Then Lady Alara returned with no hood and no patience. That changed the entire square. Poor women stared, rich servants froze, and the guild spies suddenly remembered they had eyes for social rank. She asked for sugar, hand cream, lamp oil, and 3 cuts of beef. Then she lowered her voice and asked whether I had softer fabric hidden away from rough public fingers and rougher men. I did. 2 small packs of discounted cotton sleep shirts from a summer clearance bin. Worth little in my world. Worth scandal, softness, and leverage in hers. I named a price fit for sin. She did not flinch. She paid in stamped silver and 1 sealed note. Inside was a route sketch to a safer rear lane by the square. Her way of buying more than cloth tonight. That note mattered more than the silver. Better access meant controlled unloading, hidden premium exits, and shorter exposure during transfer. Lady Alara was buying discretion. The rear lane changed everything within 1 hour. I moved premium pickup away from the main queue, cut noble panic, and freed the front counter for volume sales. Flow improved, so did risk. Because every better system attracts smarter parasites. Near second bell, 1 thin girl slipped through the rear lane carrying an empty basket in the face of someone born in alleys instead of beds. She moved too cleanly for a starving widow and too casually for a noble servant. She watched locks, not labels, hands, not prices, routes, not goods. That made her either useful or lethal. I caught her near the medicine drawer with 3 soap bars already inside her shawl. She did not beg, cry, or run. She just clicked her tongue and said my blind spots were embarrassing. I should have turned her over to Maris. Instead, I asked how many guards watched the west roofline. She answered without blinking. 2 tonight, 1 drunk, 1 bought, both useless after third bell. That answer bought her 5 more seconds of life inside my planning. I asked her name. She gave me 2 false ones first. Then she shrugged and said the real one was Lysa. Lysa said the guild had paid boys to map my shutters, count my lamp oil, and watch which women left with premium parcels. They were planning theft by route, not by frontal rush. That matched the wax trick. Good. My enemies were evolving from loud greed into organized pressure. Better to hire information than bleed ignorance. So I made Lysa a filthy, practical offer. She gets food, soap, and 1 fixed silver share for verified routes, names, and traps. She touches nothing without permission. Second theft means she is out forever. No appeal. Lysa laughed and asked whether that was a threat. I told her no, a store policy. She laughed harder. That was not trust. It was worse and better. It was professional interest. The blue screen chimed again. Gray route logistics unlocked. Cost, instability if abused. Benefit, route intelligence, covert movement, and better demand mapping across the district. With Maris on the queue, Sina on treatment swaps, and Lysa on routes, my supermarket finally stopped feeling like one terrified man behind a glowing box. It felt like a small machine. Machines need output, so I built the night's first true package ladder. Basic ration, guard ration, healer pack, hunt pack, widow pack, noble comfort pack, and premium private parcel by request. Each bundle solved a different hunger. Stomach, status, fever, vanity, grief, fear. People like to pretend those hungers compete. They do not. They stack. Good stores survive by learning the order. Turnover surged to 188 silver value, then 212, then 239. For the first time, I saw something more valuable than coin. Returning customers moved faster, argued less, and brought cleaner trade goods. That is how a market becomes a system. Not when people admire it, but when they plan around it. By third bell, women were timing medicine pickups around meat drops and cloth around patrols. Sina proved her worth next. She returned with 1 treated boy from the fever house and laid out the result like an audit. Alcohol reduced rot. Soap prevented stink. Tablets broke his fever. She said it in front of everyone, which was either gratitude or advertising. I accepted both. 3 mothers bought healer bundles on the spot. 1 old widow kissed the counter. Maris used the moment better than I did. She pulled 3 reliable widows into lane work, assigned 1 former laundress to cloth counting, and doubled the rear exit watch without asking permission. Normally, I would hate that. Tonight, I loved it. She was expanding operations inside my rules instead of around them. Growth through others. Exactly what the blue screen kept rewarding and punishing. Lysa then delivered her first real score. The guild planned to hit a carrier, not the store. Easier target, lower risk, better leverage. They wanted to make my trusted women look like thieves. That was smart enough to scare me. 1 ruined carrier and every queue would rot back into panic. So I set a counter trap. Decoy parcels, false labels, and a very visible wrong route. The fake parcel carried soap bricks wrapped like sugar, cloth scraps packed like medicine, and 1 cheap perfume sample sealed on top to tempt stupid hands. Lysa grinned like she had found religion. Maris hated the plan because it used her women as bait. Fair, so I adjusted. The decoy goes with hired boys and 1 hidden huntress on the roofline. Cost higher, trust preserved. That compromise mattered. Every plan needs a price. I spent silver and delayed 2 noble orders. In return, I kept Maris loyal and properly tested Lysa's information under pressure. The trap worked at 4th bell. 2 guild hands jumped the false route by the tannery wall. The boys dropped the parcel, the huntress whistled, and Lisa's rooftop watcher boxed them in. We caught one with perfume on his sleeve and soap dust on his boots. The other ran into a cart axle and broke his lip open. Nothing glorious, just the satisfying clumsiness of bad thieves. I did not beat them. I did something better. I marched them to the front under lamplight and opened the parcel in front of the queue. Soap, scrap cloth, no medicine, no sugar. Then Lysa named the paying hand behind them. Not the guildmaster himself, of course. Men like that never touch mud directly. It was his nephew, which is almost as useful and much louder. Tonight's second face slap landed harder than the first. The same guild house that called me false had sent thieves to rob widow roots. Even rich clients looked disgusted now. Perfect. Lady Alara, who had stayed longer than any noblewoman should, asked whether all men in my world protected customers this stubbornly. I said only the underpaid ones usually did. Turnover crossed 301 silver value with 40 minutes left. I only needed 39 more, but greed is safest when broken into categories. I pushed cloth, sugar, and premium meat instead of risking staples. Sina bought 1 more medical lot. Maris reserved dawn rations. Lady Alara took another private parcel, this time with hand cream, sugar, and one cotton shirt she pretended not to care about. Lysa returned with demand notes from 2 alleys, 1 bathhouse, and a chapel kitchen. The women there wanted lamp oil, soap flakes, pins, and cheap mirror pieces more than extra meat tonight. That was a lesson I nearly missed. Hunger creates demand, but routine creates retention. If people believe your store can preserve some shape of normal life, they come back before they have to. So I opened a dignity shelf from damaged goods. Pins, soap ends, combs, fabric ties, tiny creams, and cracked compact mirrors. Low cost to me, absurd emotional value to women tired of surviving. The dignity shelf sold faster than the last exposed rice cup. Not because hunger ended, but because a starving person still wants to feel human. That is not weakness. That is repeat business. The blue screen rang softly. Turnover target met. 347 silver value. Stability 67%. District reputation increased. Daylight exposure risk 18%. Lovely for my stress levels. Final bell approached. Maris had 6 regular carriers and 4 lane women. Sina had a trial clinic line. Lisa had root control and 1 blackmail file already growing under her grin. As the square blurred back toward asphalt and dead streetlights, Maris gave me the simplest report of the night. We moved food without a riot. That means tomorrow the district will come hungrier. I spent the daylight shift counting dented cans, damaged soap, and every item nobody respected until hunger touched it. Waste in my world was stock. Waste in theirs was power. By closing time, I had hidden 2 crates of staples, tagged premium goods with fake markdown stickers, and built one simple rule in my head. Tonight, the store would stop reacting. The jump came cleaner than before. Lights steadied after 1 hard pulse, the square returned, and the blue screen raised the target again. Turnover, 520 silver value. Stability, 69%. It also offered my first real upgrade path. Market ring available. Cost, controlled exterior lanes, local labor, and 1 trusted security lead. Benefit, more flow, less chaos, more exposure. I picked yes before I could second guess it. A store this crowded could not stay a glowing box in a starving square. It needed shape. Shape is what turns survival into leverage. Ion Skadaski. Maris arrived before the doors finished opening. This time she brought chalk, rope, scrapboards, and 10 women who moved like they already belonged to payroll, even if none of them did. Sina rolled in behind her with herb baskets, a folding table, and 3 mothers carrying patients too weak to stand in line long. My store was becoming a clinic whether I liked it or not. Lysa came last, grinning like a bad investment with good returns. She had 2 alley boys, 1 stolen city map, and news that 3 nearby districts planned to test my prices tonight. I showed them the blue screen numbers. Maris only cared about the target. Sina cared about the stability. Lysa cared about the word exposure. Smart. That one always heard the knife in the room. We marked the square fast. Rope lane for staples. Narrow side lane for medicine. Rear curtain for premium parcels and discreet clients. 1 exchange table. 1 watch post. 1 no-fight rule. Women from the district helped because hunger had already taught them disorder costs meals. They hammered pegs, tied rope, moved carts, and built order faster than city councils. The first new thing I sold was not food. It was tokens. Scrapwood circles with numbers burned into them. Paid orders got tokens. Tokens got served. Suddenly waiting had a structure. That tiny change bought silence. No more 5 people lunging at one shelf because they feared invisible theft. If a woman held a token, she held proof the line would not erase her. The blue screen rewarded it immediately. Queue discipline improved. Chaos loss dropped 11%. I loved that stupid machine for speaking fluent, measurable relief into my nerves. Once the lane settled, I opened the staples window. Rice by cup, salt by pouch, cheap stew, lamp oil, soap ends, rough cloth, dried beans, and a little flour I almost kept back. I kept back half anyway. A starving district can smell a full shelf the way wolves smell blood. Too much visible abundance turns buyers into raiders and raiders into politicians very quickly. Maris took the staple line like a veteran quartermaster. She called numbers, counted portions aloud, and cut off 1 woman trying to buy 6 rations through borrowed veils. No drama, just limits. That should have made people hate her. Instead, they trusted her more. Hunger forgives harsh rules faster than soft lies. A fair refusal is worth more than a smiling theft. Sina's table filled before my meat case did. Winter cough, split hands, infected cuts, fever, rotten teeth. Every body in line looked like an invoice sent by the season itself. I traded tablets, alcohol, gauze, and boiled blades for herbs, resin, dried bark, and names. Sina understood immediately that information was also payment, sometimes the most useful kind. By first bell, I had demand notes from 4 kitchens, 3 hunt teams, 1 bathhouse, 2 shrines, and a widow district that wanted less meat tonight and more flour than yesterday. That changed my next decision. Meat made noise, but flour made habit. Noise brings profit. Habit builds systems. I shifted 1 crate forward and locked the premium freezer 1 hour early. Lisa noticed and laughed at me for acting old before my time. Then she sold 2 mirror shards and 6 combs from the Dignity Shelf route before I finished arguing with her. That shelf had mutated into its own small religion. Pins, combs, cream packets, fabric ties, soap flakes, hand lotion, cheap scent, cracked mirrors, little things, human things, fast-moving things. The women who bought from it stood straighter after. Not healed, not fed enough, just less erased. I started tracking the shelf separately because emotion with repeat demand is inventory gold. Turnover crossed 119 silver value before second bell. Better than expected, still too low for safety. Part of me wanted to push premium meat and sugar hard. The wiser part wanted resilience. Then Lady Alara's carriage stopped at the edge of the square. Not openly, of course. Curtains drawn, crest covered. 2 maids, 1 guard, and a hood low enough to start gossip anyway. She sent the maid first with a note demanding private service. Mara snorted once and handed it to me like it was a dead rat wrapped in velvet, perfume, and entitlement, included. The note offered gold for immediate access and silence. Good money. Bad precedent. If I broke the lane rules for 1 noblewoman, the market ring would become another rich mouth eating the poor. So I wrote back on receipt paper. Private lane available after staple hour. Full price. No front interruption. Bring exact payment. I sent the maid away with the kindest insult I could manage. Maris looked ready to approve me for life. Lisa looked disappointed I had not asked for more. Sina just kept wrapping a burned hand and said dignity needs rules or it becomes theater. Lady Alara returned at second bell in a plain cloak that cost more than my month's pay in daylight. She waited behind 3 hunt widows and 1 laundress. Nobody dared laugh aloud. That was the face slap. Not cruelty, just gravity. She had entered my square as rank. She stood in line as demand. Hunger and scarcity do not kneel just because silk arrives late. When her turn came, I offered no speech. I showed the private board. Cotton shirts, sugar, soap cakes, hand cream, soft towels, tea, spices, and 1 premium parcel by sealed request. She bought enough to feed a secret and perfume enough to betray one. While I packed it, she asked whether men in my world are trained to refuse noblewomen without shaking. I told her only the underpaid ones learn that skill properly. One of her maids choked trying not to laugh. Alara did not smile, but she came back the next night, so I won. The rear lane grew into its own beast after that. Noble parcels, healer reserves, hunt contracts, and discreet beauty orders all moved through 1 curtain and Maris's ledgers. I hated how much I needed ledgers in a magical night market. I loved how much ledgers solved. Every line written down became 1 less lie available to desperate people after midnight. The square itself changed around us. Women set up side stalls outside my rope lines. Gloves, broth bowls, herbs, stitched hoods, hooks, patched blankets, skins, candles, even cheap charms. My supermarket had become an anchor without asking permission. Goods attracted people. People attracted trade. Trade attracted security, rumor, jealousy, then power. And power always demanded a chair. The blue screen approved the spread. Market ring established. Adjacent commerce boosts retention. Territorial challenge risk raised. Even the system knew success invoices later. Lisa used the side stalls faster than anyone. She started mapping which women sold well. Who owed grain, who drank, whose brother served which wall, and who would betray a friend for winter boots. That sounded ugly because it was ugly, but ugly knowledge keeps clean systems alive. I let her build a black notebook under 1 condition: no using debt to target widows or children. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might escape, then agreed. Lisa loved profit, but she loved my soap and lamp oil roots more. Addiction comes in many respectable forms. By third bell, I opened what Maris called the broth corner and what I called margin management. Broken noodles, stock cubes, bruised vegetables, meat trim, cheap hot bowls, massive crowd control. Hot food slowed panic better than any shouted order. A woman with a warm cup waits differently than a starving one with empty hands. I made less per portion and more per hour. Sina claimed the broth steam helped fever lungs. I suspected she was just protecting her treatment table from being overrun by people too weak to stand. Either way, the corner stayed. Turnover hit 264 silver value. Strong, but still not enough. The problem was obvious now. The district had accepted my market. Tonight something bigger would try to tax it, own it, or break it. Right on cue, 4 soldiers in a petty baron's colors arrived with polished boots and empty eyes. Their captain announced protection duties in the tone menus before theft dressed as law. He said no market in the square could operate without the baron's sanction. I asked where the baron had been when women were trading wedding rings for moldy grain 2 weeks ago. He ignored that and demanded 10% of all staple stock, payable immediately. Maris's hands tightened. Lysa vanished, which meant she was preparing either a root or a problem. Maybe both. I could not refuse like a hero, and Hope Steel solved itself. 4 armed men were enough to wreck my lanes and turn one scared shove into a full riot. I needed a crowd weapon. So I raised my voice and repeated the demand exactly as the captain said it. 10% of all staples, rice, flour, beans, and salt, taken before mothers and guard widows were served. People heard the math faster than the outrage. 10% meant missing bowls, missing fever porridge, missing dawn rations for watchwomen. The square turned cold in a single shared breath. The captain realized too late he was no longer negotiating with one seller. He was standing between hungry women and tonight's survival. That is a worse battlefield than any open field. Maris stepped beside me and asked him, loudly, whether the Baron wished his own district watch to starve first or last. Even his soldiers looked annoyed at being used that cheaply. Sina added the next knife. She asked if she should send his tax share to the fever house too, or if sick children paid separately under noble customs. Nice. She learns fast. Lysa returned behind them with 3 stall women and 1 old fishmonger who hated the Baron's clerk on principle alone. She did not confront him. She closed his retreat with witnesses. The captain tried to salvage authority by calling my store foreign sorcery. That would have scared me on night 1. Now it sounded like policy invented from hunger and embarrassment. I opened a rice sack, measured 1 exact cup, and handed it to the widow nearest the line. Then another. Then another. I made the Baron's claim compete directly with visible mercy and order. The women did the rest. Not a riot. Something worse for soldiers. Disciplined contempt. They did not attack. They watched. They counted. They made the captain feel exactly what he was worth. He backed down to a registration demand instead. Name of operator. Value of goods. Noble sponsor. Tax class. Real administration is always sneakier than theft when theft fails in public. I gave him a receipt roll and told him he could wait until staple hour ended like everyone else. The square laughed then, not loudly, but enough. Another face slap landed where it should. He left with his men, and no goods. Victory, yes, but expensive. I had just made a petty baron lose face before his hungry district. Men like that invoice later, with interest. The blue screen rewarded the stand and punished the truth. District reputation up, territorial hostility up, stability unchanged, exposure risk up, balanced misery, beautifully measured. After the soldiers withdrew, the line moved twice as fast. Anger sharpened purpose. Women bought hard and spread word faster. Nothing markets a store like public survival. Turnover crossed 352 silver value. Better, still not enough for comfort. So I expanded upward instead of outward. 1 shelf became premium bundles. Tea, sugar, spices, soap, cream, cloth, candle sets. Alara bought 2 sealed bundles and asked whether I would consider private standing orders for select households. I considered the gold. Then I considered every woman still holding staple tokens. That was the night's worst dilemma. Elite contracts could stabilize supply and attract guards. They could also corrupt the market ring into a beautiful betrayal machine wearing clean gloves. I compromised the only way I could live with. Standing orders allowed, but only after staple thresholds clear. Bread first, vanity second, secrecy priced extra, and no skipped queues. Maris did not say thank you. She simply moved one of her women to a new board labeled reserved after threshold. That is how approval looks in competent people. Quiet and useful. Sina pushed for a bigger clinic table next. More alcohol, more cloth, more broth priority for nursing mothers, and 1 locked drawer for pain tablets before idiots started eating them like candy. She was right. A market feeding women through hunger season without medicine was a slower funeral. So I invested stock into healing instead of 1 more premium freezer night. Lysa wanted the opposite. More gray roots, private parcels, leverage on noble kitchens and bathhouses. She was not wrong. High-margin shadows keep righteous systems supplied. I split the budget and annoyed everyone evenly. Better clinic, limited gray route growth, no expansion of meat volume yet, and 1 hidden reserve under the detergent pallets for true emergencies only. That decision hurt immediate turnover. It probably saved next week. Real systems are built from refusing the perfect sale when it damages tomorrow's line. I hate how often adulthood is just that. The side stalls multiplied by 4th bell. 1 woman sold stitched token pouches. Another sold broth herbs matched to Sina's mixes. Someone else offered cheap wraps sized for my rice cups. Ecosystem. Watching that happen felt stranger than the magic transfer. I had not built a castle or raised a flag. I had just made supply predictable for 4 nights. That was enough to grow habits. The blue screen added another blessing. Adjacent vendor trust increased. Return traffic probability up. Retail management in fantasy clothes still threatened me with feudal violence. Then the first crack hit from inside, not outside. One lane woman tried slipping 2 extra flower tokens to her sister. Maris caught it instantly. The square went silent, waiting for my response. Small theft by family is the hardest kind. Too soft, the rules die. Too cruel, the market feels like another regime feeding on grief. I had to hit the act without killing the woman. So I voided both tokens, moved the sister to the end of the line, and kept the worker on duty under public warning. 1 strike, no dismissal tonight, full rations docked tomorrow. Harsh enough to matter. Mild enough to keep loyalty from snapping. Maris approved. Sina thought it fair. Lysa called it soft. The line kept moving, which was the only verdict that counted. Turnover reached 431 silver value with less than an hour left. Close, not safe. I pushed one last wave through the dignity shelf, broth corner, and premium tea line instead of rice. That choice looked odd until you watched the numbers. Staples maintain the district. Dignity and warmth maintain return flow. Tomorrow changes how people spend tonight, and tonight shapes trust. Ilara's maid bought hand towels and combs for 3 other noble houses before dawn. Nothing grows a premium lane faster than one proud woman fearing another smells better. The Hunt widows reserved dawn meat scraps for drying. Sina secured alcohol and cloth for 3 days. Lysa mapped 2 more alleys. Maris quietly asked for more rope, more boards, and better lamps. There it was. Base building in plain sight. Not walls and towers, but lanes, rolls, reserves, signals, thresholds, side commerce, and women planning tomorrow around a store that should not exist. Final bell approached with the square, looking nothing like my first terrified night. Lantern knots hung from rope posts. Token boards half empty. Broth pots scraped clean. No riot anywhere. The blue screen closed the ledger at 548 silver value. Target cleared. Stability 74%. Market ring stabilized. Territorial challenge pending. Storage unlock next cycle. As the square blurred back into asphalt and dead signage, Maris gave me the report that mattered. "We are no longer a shop people visit," she said. "We are a place they organize around." I believed her because that was now the real danger. Hungry women had built a market around me. A petty baron wanted control, and daylight management still thought I was just underperforming. The next 3 transfers proved her right. Women started arriving with lists instead of guesses, baskets sized to token limits, and neighbors pooling silver for flour like disciplined cooperatives. That changed my inventory logic again. Random shelf selling died. Forecasting was born. I kept whiteboard counts in my head by district, lane, weather, and visible grief. Auxiliary storage unlocked on the 5th night of the ring. Cost, local construction, guarded dry space, and 1 trusted keeper. Benefit, safer reserves and bigger batch handling. I took it and put Maris over the reserve shed before she could pretend not to want it. She chose a ruined stone booth near the well and turned it into a ration vault by midnight. No noble got to see inside. Not even Ilara, especially not Ilara. Visible mystery protects inventory better than open abundance, and every hidden sack felt like 1 less knife pointed at my doors. Sina expanded next. Her little table became a curtained care corner with boiled water, clean cloth, broth priority, and 1 stool women treated like a chapel bench once pain got bad enough. The clinic did not make the most silver. It made the strongest loyalty. A mother whose child sleeps through fever remembers longer than a captain who bought 1 glorious cut of imported meat. Lysa built the shadows beneath all that order. She recruited 2 washer girls, 1 mute runner, and a widow who remembered every debt in the square better than any magistrate with a seal. I should have worried more about how much power that gave her. Instead, I worried about flour, lamp oil, and whether my day manager would ask why damaged hand cream kept disappearing. In daylight, I solved that by volunteering for markdown duty. Nobody guards trash carefully in my world. I became king of dented tins, torn multi-packs, cracked soap cartons, and nearly expired dignity. Back in the square, the side stalls evolved from scavenged trade into dependency webs. 1 widow sold soup cups sized exactly to my ration bundles. Another mended shawls to fit carrier hooks. Maris hated how much I admired that. She said admiration feeds distraction. I said predictable supply feeds civilizations. She said civilizations still need gates and lamps. She was right, annoyingly. So we built gates without walls. Rope turns, cart choke points, 1 raised table for counts, 1 whistle code for theft, 1 bell code for soldiers, 2 for fire. The first time the bells rang for fire, the whole square moved before panic could think. Broth covered, cloth pulled back, oil lifted, reserve shed sealed. Practice worked. That drill cost me premium sales for 1 whole transfer. It also convinced me training is inventory. Every woman who knows where to stand in a crisis is worth more than 1 extra crate. Ilara noticed the difference before anyone else with silk usually does. She stopped asking for favors and started asking for contracts, soaps, sugar, cloth grades, tea, and regular towels. I made her wait on those too. Not to wound her, to price the truth. Noble contracts would bring gold, gossip, and guards. They would also teach the district who gets comfort first. So I designed threshold contracts. No noble order fills until staple quotas clear. Ilara called that insolent. Then she signed anyway because excellent soap lowers pride fast. The petty baron answered with smaller bites after his public loss. A clerk here, a rumor there, questions about impurity, mutters that women were becoming too bold near my lights. Predictable poison. Lisa traced most of it in 2 nights. 3 paid whisperers, 1 drunk sergeant, and a chapel scribe who suddenly found theology every time my perfume shelf sold out before 3rd bell. My day manager finally noticed the pattern. Damaged stock vanished slower than reports predicted, but premium leftovers vanished faster. He smiled the way traps smile before they close. He assigned me to inventory with a district supervisor watching. Every dented can now had a witness. Every missing bar of soap had a clipboard. My night profits suddenly had daylight teeth. At 11:48 p.m., I still had 3 scanners pointed at me, 1 open spreadsheet, and exactly 0 good lies. Then the lights dipped, the freezer fans roared, and the square came back. The blue screen did not bother with comfort. Emergency event. Hostile coalition detected. Night target, 900 silver value. Stability, 64%. Failure risk, collapse and origin exposure. I stared at the numbers and laughed once, because panic with accounting attached still counts as panic. 900 was not trade. 900 was siege math wearing a market mask. Maris arrived already armed, hair tied back, eyes colder than the meat case. She had 20 women in proper shifts now, whistles at their throats, poles in hand, and sleep nowhere near them. Sina brought stretchers, boiled water, and the face she used when somebody important was about to bleed. Lysa brought worse. The Baron, the Guild, and the Chapel had finally agreed on one thing. They wanted my lanes shut, my shelves seized, and my women scattered. Hunger had failed to break us. Cheap knives had failed too. So tonight they would use law, fire, and public fear. Ilara came without a hood for once. That alone told me how serious it was. She said chapel men were calling my soap corruption and my sugar seduction. My perfume shelf had become theology. I asked who signed the complaint. She named a chapel examiner, the guild factor I humiliated, and the petty baron's steward. 3 small powers together. Annoying. Enough to poison a city, though. The blue screen offered 1 upgrade and 1 insult. Crisis routing available. Cost, 12 reserve crates, 3 hidden exits, and loss of visible stock. Benefit, partial continuity during raids or panic. I bought it immediately. A market lives on what people can see. A siege lives on what enemies cannot. If I had to look smaller to survive bigger, then smaller would have to win. We split the night before the doors opened. Maris cut the square into defense zones. Sina turned the clinic curtain into a triage wall. Lisa emptied 2 side sheds before anyone noticed. I cut the visible staples by half and raised the token limit. Angry customers are dangerous. Truly empty shelves are worse. I needed the square crowded enough to look alive, never desperate. First bell brought the usual line of mothers, hunters, and workers. Second bell brought the unusual silence behind them. Men in chapel gray, guild clerks, 6 baron guards pretending not to stare. The examiner walked up like a man who had never missed a meal in winter. He read a decree about dangerous trade, female disorder, false medicine, and goods beyond proper custom. I let him finish. Then I asked whether he wanted to say all that in front of the women whose children were alive because Sina had clean alcohol and sealed bandages from my shelf. He said doctrine outranked hunger. That was his mistake. Not morally. Tactically. Nobody says that in a starving district unless he has soldiers enough to kill every witness after. Sina stood up first. She named 5 patients the chapel had refused because they could not pay. One mother lifted a child whose fever I had helped break with modern tablets and boiled water. The examiner tried to call it sorcery. Ilara stepped in before I could. She said if this was sorcery, then half the noble quarter had washed with it and smelled grateful afterward. That hit the crowd like thrown oil. Women laughed. The guild factor's smile cracked. The examiner turned toward Alara as if rank might save him. She only adjusted her gloves and waited. I added the knife twist. I asked the factor whether he wanted to explain why chapel concerns only appeared after my market stopped his spoiled grain from selling. Silence is a beautiful confession. He denied it, of course. Lisa had prepared better. 2 alley boys rolled a cart forward carrying sacks stamped with guild markings full of mold-dark meal. The smell won the argument fast. The factor called it sabotage. Maris called it food. Then she asked 3 widows whether they recognized the stamp from the sacks they had bought last month. They did. Loudly. Very loudly. The crowd did the rest for us. Not a riot, not yet. Just that dangerous shift when fear stops looking up and starts looking straight at the men who had profited from it. Now. I should have enjoyed that more. Instead, I saw the barren guards spreading out. 1 toward the reserve shed, 2 toward the lamp ropes, 3 toward the clinic lane. So it began. I blew the whistle code for pressure. Maris answered with 2 sharp notes and the square changed shape. Queue women dropped back. Gate women stepped forward. Cart choke points locked into place. The first fire pot landed where the cheap blankets hung. Not on the premium lane, not on the store doors. Smart. They wanted panic among the poor, not damage among the rich. Practice saved us. Water line left, sand line right, hooks down, cloth off. The flame died ugly and quick. The women near it did not scream. That shook the attackers more than fire did. Then someone cut the lamp rope over lane 2 and darkness folded into the crowd. I heard a child cry, metal hit wood, and a crate crack open somewhere it should not have been. Crisis routing engaged. Blue arrows flashed across my screen, showing hidden exits and reserve paths through stock walls and side carts. I had paid 12 crates for exactly this ugly moment. I sent mothers through the west strip, hunters through the south, and all paid premium pickups into the locked return corridor. Alara did not argue. Credit to Silk, panic teaches fast. The next attack hit inside the store. 2 men in porter aprons pushed through the receiving door while the square watched the fire. Day-world lesson, uniforms are just lies with buttons. I couldn't outfight them, so I outspaced them. I triggered aisle lights in waves, sealed freezer row 3, and opened the mop closet they were not expecting. Soap water ruins brave entrances. 1 slid hard, slammed into canned beans, and lost his knife under a pallet. The second made it farther until I jammed a stocking card into his knees and the alarm did the rest. Lisa appeared from nowhere with a box cutter and the warmest smile she uses on doomed men. She did not stab him. She only removed his apron tie and found the steward's seal stitched inside. Outside, the examiner tried to recover control by shouting excommunication, impurity, and female shame. Harder to preach that while my customers held his allies' rotten grain in both hands. Ilara stepped onto the raised table without asking me and announced her family's chapel donations by exact year and silver count. Then she asked whether holy men now preferred mold over soap. I almost applauded. Instead, I sold 2 premium tea packets while everyone stared at her. A market does not stop because men throw words. That may be the cruelest rule I know. The Baron Steward finally showed himself then, red-faced and armored, flanked by guards who looked far less sure than their pay should have made them. He demanded seizure of all imported stores. I asked under whose inventory law. He named the Baron. I asked whether the Baron planned to feed the district after seizure. No answer. Maris made sure that silence reached every ear. He switched from law to force. Guards advanced on lane 1. Maris answered with poles, hooks, and women who had spent 3 weeks learning where exactly a man needs space to lose formation. This was not a glorious battle. It was elbows and choke points, poles under knees, hooks on shields, boiling wash water from the clinic, and every cart placed where a horse-trained fool would trip. I stayed behind the counter and hated that. Heroes swing blades. Managers count angles. I counted 3 breaches, 2 sealed, 1 moving for the clinic. So I moved because numbers said move. Sina was kneeling over a boy with a cut scalp when the breach opened. 1 guard shoved through the cloth line. I threw a glass jar of pickles at his face and used the second to run. It bought exactly 1 second. Sina used it better than I did. She slammed the boiling kettle into his gauntlet. He dropped the blade. 2 mothers dragged the boy clear. 1 hunter finished him. The blue screen updated in the noise. Turnover, 611. Stability, 57%. Casualty risk rising. Suggested response, public proof event or controlled retreat. Even my system wanted theater. So I gave it theater. Lisa dragged the captured porter to the square mouth. I held up the steward's seal from his apron. Ilara named the house. Maris named the target. Our food, not our sins. Then Cena raised one of my antibiotic strips and told the crowd exactly how many lives those little tablets had saved this week. Numbers beat sermons when fever has already met your child. I added prices because numbers love company. 1 strip, 1 silver. 1 funeral, far more. 3 sacks of guild meal bought last month had sickened 11 children. The square got very still at that. The examiner tried to leave. The women blocked him without touching him. That was the genius of it. No riot, no martyr, just a corridor of witnesses while every lie he spoke lost another shoe. The steward chose that moment to order a final push at the reserve shed. He had guessed correctly for once. Break the hidden stock, and panic would do the work his men could not. Maris was already moving there, but too far to stop first contact. I had 1 reserve option left. Collapse the lane. Cost, lose visible inventory, lose 3 hours of setup, maybe save the core. I hit yes. Barrier shutters dropped over the shed approach. 2 display stacks tipped by design, not accident. Rice burst across the stones like surrender. Half the crowd gasped as if I had gone mad. I had, a little. But spilled rice beats stolen rice when a siege wants your throat. The attackers lunged for grain. The women lunged harder, and their whole advance dissolved into grabbing chaos. That cost me 8 full ration rows, and every pretty display Cena said made the market feel human. It also bought Maris enough time to pin the last organized guard line against a cart wall. She did not kill them all. Better, she made them kneel. Public defeat lasts longer than private blood. The Baron's steward took 1 look at his own men on stone and tried to back away. Lysa had already cut off that route with 3 fishwives carrying cleavers they legally used for dinner. No one touched the steward. No one had to. He could feel the district measuring him now. Alara closed the trap with silk instead of steel. She asked whether she should report tonight to her uncle before or after mentioning the steward's seal on hired thieves and fire pots. He understood rank better than hunger, so that landed deepest. He surrendered the decree first, then his voice, then finally the posture of a man who thought poor women were background furniture. The examiner tried 1 last claim, that all this disorder proved women should never gather unsupervised near foreign goods. Cena answered by asking who had kept the district alive all winter. No answer again. Widows, hunters, laundresses, mothers, smugglers, 1 noblewoman, 1 healer, and 1 exhausted cashier stared him down until doctrine looked like cowardice wrapped in cloth. The square should have exploded into victory then. It didn't. Too many people were hurt, too much rice was on the ground, and the smoke still tasted real. Expensive winds never sing long. We spent the next hour on damage control. Cena triaged burns and cuts. Maris counted usable poles, standing guards, and lost stock. Lysa recovered 2 hidden crates and 3 names from the porters. I handled the ledger because grief without numbers becomes fog. Lost, 8 ration rows, 12 lamp bottles, 1 towel case, half a tea chest. Saved, core grain, medicine lane, soap, cash lock. The blue screen rewarded me like an insult dressed as praise. Turnover, 947. Stability, 61%. Coalition survived. Bonus, protected contract, tier 1. New risk, regional notice increased. Regional notice, of course. Win 1 market and some larger mouth starts smelling soup. I should have felt proud. Mostly I felt tired enough to sleep inside the freezer and call it strategy. In daylight, the cost arrived immediately. The district supervisor replayed camera gaps and stock irregularities while my manager watched me smile thinly. Headquarters wanted an audit next week. That meant I had days, not weeks, to clean the day world. Camera blind spots, markdown logs, damaged counts, freezer pull sheets. Every ugly little miracle now needed a paper twin. Lysa said forged invoices were possible for a price. Maris hated it. I hated needing it. But honest arithmetic had already brought armed men to my doors in one world. Why spare the other? Cena counted bandages while we argued and cut through us both. If the audit closed my store, the district lost medicine first. That settled the ethics faster than any sermon could. So now both worlds were done pretending. One wanted my shelves, the other wanted my paperwork. Hunger below, audit above, a beautiful little sandwich with me in the middle. I told Maris that night. She said papers kill slower than blades, but deeper. Cena said we needed quieter routes before more children learned to depend on visible miracles. Lysa wanted blackmail. Alara wanted contracts, real ones this time. Not private parcels and scented secrets, but written obligations with house seals, escorts, delivery shares, and debts dressed up as protection. I hated that she was right on timing. Bigger power could shield us from petty power. Bigger power could also own us by spring. There is no free wall in a hungry city, only rented stone. So I did what I always do when all options taste bad. I counted. Stock, allies, enemies, routes, audit days, bribe value, loyalty value, rumor speed, lamp oil, rope, clean jars, strong backs. The numbers gave me no comfort, only shape. We had survived the first real coalition. We had not beaten the game. We had announced ourselves to players with larger boards. Before dawn blurred the square away, a sealed carriage stopped outside lane 3. No barren colors, no chapel gray, deep blue lacquer, silver crest, disciplined horses, money and appetite together. Lisa read the crest first and lost her grin. Maris went still. Even Alara lowered her eyes half an inch. That scared me more than the carriage itself. Important women frighten capable women. A servant stepped down, immaculate despite the smoke, and placed a formal request on my counter. The Duchess of North March required private audience, immediate terms, and discussion of supply. The servant placed the sealed request on my counter and stepped back as if my register were a throne. Duchess of North March, private audience, immediate terms, no room for refusal. Maris checked the square before I broke the wax. Lisa checked the servant's boots. Alara checked the handwriting. Sina checked my face because she knew bad news has a pulse long before words. The letter was short. The Duchess required grain forecasts, medicine lists, soap allotments, and discreet luxury stock. She also required silence. Silence from powerful people is never cheap. My screen agreed. New notice. Regional attention detected. Opportunity value high. Exposure risk high. Stability bonus available if a major contract is secured before the next 3 transfers end. So that was the new game. I had climbed from hungry mothers and alley knives to titled women with accountants and cavalry. Same shelves, same scanners. Much more dangerous customers. I did not answer at once. I asked the servant what the Duchess currently paid for grain, salt, lamp oil, and clean linen. He hesitated. Good. Even polished men dislike real numbers. When he named the rates, Maris let out one flat breath. The district had been starving while noble depots paid less than widows paid me for cracked rice and dented stew tins. Alara looked angry for the first time in a way that had nothing to do with wounded pride. Apparently Silk also dislikes learning exactly how much rot sits under polished silver. Lisa wanted to accept at once, rob the margin, and use the Duchess against the Baron. Maris wanted terms, escorts, and written boundaries. Sina wanted medicine prioritized before perfume. They were all right, which was annoying. I had one store, one tired body, one coming audit, and now one Duchess trying to sit on top of my fragile system and call it order. So I gave the servant a holding answer. One night, no promises. Priority goods depend on staple flow, district need, and payment structure. He bowed like I had said something noble. He left behind a smaller sealed token, a pass for the outer road, and one warning delivered without expression. The Duchess did not enjoy waiting behind lesser men or their smaller games. As soon as the carriage rolled off, the square changed. Women whispered faster. The guards stood straighter. Even customers with 3 coppers began speaking softer, as if rank itself altered the air. Maris hated that. She reminded everyone that our lines, limits, and staple quotas still held. One title did not move bread ahead of children. Hearing that out loud steadied the square. That sentence cost me future favor. I knew it the moment I let it stand. Power likes stores that bend. I was trying to become one that negotiated instead of kneeling on command. The numbers from the coalition fight still hurt. 8 ration rows gone, 2 clinic tables damaged, 3 reserve crates hidden, 47 staple tokens still outstanding. I counted aloud because I needed to hear the shape of survival. Rice low, salt stable, soap strong, antibiotics critical, sugar thin, perfume dangerous but profitable, meat stock attractive and loud. Sina cut through the list and circled medicine first. She was right. The district remembered sugar fondly, but it remembered fever personally. If I chased silk money too fast, children paid. Alara surprised me by agreeing. She said noble women would wait 1 more week for scented oil if they believed waiting kept their houses from catching the same cough as the alleys. That was the first moment I stopped seeing her as only a spoiled customer with expensive gloves. People reveal their real rank when comfort is delayed and they still think beyond themselves. Lisa ruined the mood by asking whether noble women would also wait for stockings. Then she asked whether I had more. 3 hunters near Lane 2 suddenly found inventory fascinating for no reason. That told me something useful. Hunger ruled the region, but scarcity had layers. Bread held the body, soap and cloth restored pride, perfume and silk sold hope. Hope always carried margin. So I drafted the next phase on receipt paper. Staple quotas hold, medicine expands, beauty stock stays controlled, noble contracts open only if security or transport improves. Maris added defense terms before I finished writing. Armed escorts outside the square only. No house troops inside lane 1. No noble seizure rights. Any contract breach triggers public suspension. Ilara took the paper, read it twice, and smiled very slightly. Apparently insolence turns elegant when written as policy. She offered to carry a sanitized version to the right hands. Lysa wanted a second version too. The kind delivered by people who climb walls and hear what clerks say after wine. I approved it. Official channels announce. Unofficial channels prepare. Dawn hit before I felt ready for it. The square thinned, the torches blurred, and the parking lot bled back through stone. I was standing behind Register 4 with ash on my sleeve. My manager arrived 10 minutes later with district coffee and a stranger in a clean blue coat. Headquarters smile. Audit shoes. New problem. He introduced himself as interim operations director. He said my store had shown unusual variance, unusual local demand patterns, and unusual spoilage behavior. Corporate language always sounds calm right before it starts rearranging your life. He wanted nightly access, deeper scans, and a temporary lock on all manual inventory corrections. In other words, he wanted to put a camera inside the only mask I had left. I nodded like a good employee while calculating disaster. If he locked the reports, my night losses would become visible within days. If I fought him, I might lose the store faster. At 11:52 p.m., Wysings had taken one CPU while he was still discussing process efficiency in my office. The lights dipped again. Outside, the front glass waited the same crest, now with more guards.